Hello, so this is just going to be a demo of a prototype game level that I made, and basically I'm just going to let it play out and then I'll go through some of the details after that playthrough. So here it is. So basically all of the models you see I made in Maya, and then I textured them in Substance Painter, and then the final scene is built in Unity, the Unity game engine. So the texturing process in Substance makes everything look really nice. There's a lot of like normal mapping which gives things depth that don't actually have depth, and it made like a quite cohesive scene, I guess, in the end. And so in terms of the actual storyline for the game, or the narrative, it hasn't really been super well developed. Most of the technical aspects I've worked on, but the main mechanic, I guess, of the game is basically starting in this apocalyptic world that's very atmospheric with the fog, lightning, etc. And then once you go inside, basically you have to find a sleeping capsule. You go to sleep for 1,000 years, you wake up and suddenly basically the plants have grown back and like fixed the world in some sense. And once you go inside here, you sort of get trapped in this infinite looping maze, and after you explore it a few times, then you'll eventually be able to go out into this room that opens up at one of the ends of the corridors, and that's where the sleeping capsule is held. So basically this second part of the game is all using the same models, except obviously the trees have been added, but everything else is exactly the same. And I simply just added basically a moss texture on top of the existing textures using Substance Painters again, and that creates this really green looking world without actually adding much in terms of the details. So obviously it's still very rough around the edges, it needs a lot more detail before it could become a proper game, but I like where it was going, I guess, for a start. So then this is sort of like the final trigger of the game. Once it gets to the end screen and you click any button, it actually just restarts the whole game from the start. But if you look at the year now, it's basically another 1,000 years have passed since waking up from the sleeping capsule. So it's a bit of a cruel trick showing the humanity and how quickly we forget things that happen to us. So I've just pulled up the Unity scene here, and I just wanted to highlight how much everything is a facade. So you go behind these buildings and there's just nothing, and even if you look from a slightly too high angle, it just looks terrible. You can't see anything behind the buildings, and that's basically the whole scene right there. And it gives the sort of illusion of scale without having to build out everything behind it. And clearly I could still improve this, like I could add more buildings behind, which would add to that sense of scale and make it seem like a whole city, I guess. But yeah, I was happy with where I got it for the demo anyway. And then so this is basically the first part, or the first level, and all of the indoor space was sort of connected to this inside the building. Basically the top floor is just where you enter. It's basically just the first corridor, and then you get sort of teleported below to this other network of rooms, which is the infinite maze. And so basically I've designed everything to tile seamlessly, so if I teleport the player a certain amount of, or a certain distance in these directions, I know that they'll end up with exactly the same view of the computer screen. So basically these are the box colliders which trigger that teleporting, and then along to the end of the corridor is that final room that you enter with the sleeping capsule. But yeah, that's pretty much the whole scene in Unity. Anyway, I hope you enjoyed watching this video and learnt something. Alright, see ya.